Namaste. Salutations to all of those of you to whom it may concern, of those of you who are watching this video. And today I welcome you with open arms to the journey of a new chapter of life that unfolds in the unveil, the beginning of revelations of a new chapter. And today in particular I wanted to basically speak of was in regards to excuse me, how you yourselves, and this is in regards to everyone equally as a collective, the greatest success in life is not for who you are in such a perspective to the status of your fame and glory. It is based upon, it is measured for who you are and for what positive influences that you project outwards into the world and to the mainstream and airwaves of the world, and for what good that you had performed and what you had done in this life while you were alive. And you might ask yourselves in the undying question of what does this pertain in relevance or significance and correlation with being your own superhero, as of course this is the title of the video in itself. Well, it's quite simple, because there's so much more to existence, to the universe, to life, as opposed to, as much as I am personally a fan, and as I adore with a passion for, the cosplay community, animation, film and graphics, and special effects, CGI, science fiction, fantasy, and what have you, there's also a borderline that needs to be crossed, that needs to push against the limitations and the self-expectations to go above and beyond, to rise above in the circle of life that exists within each of us, within this portal, this existence that we ourselves as human beings, we coincide, we coexist among one another. And there's a positive correlation that should exist within each of us as human beings. And ultimately what I'm saying is that you have to be your own form of inspiration for your own role model, and to ultimately you have to be the one to be your own superhero, if that makes any sense. And to clarify that into a simpler context of English, of wording, is that, of course, obviously, there are many forms and perspectives of how we as human beings, we perceive outward through our eyes in the concept and image of something as fantastic or phenomenal or exploratory as superheroes. And while of course it is based upon a fictitious realm of existence, while it does not portray an actual physical sense of realism, however, I've studied psychology, I've studied philanthropy and sociology, and in the basic understanding of the core principles of what I had concluded and the result of within the collectives of superheroes, of the fascination of superheroes. So ultimately we have a sense of a purpose, of guidance that we ourselves as human beings, we serve in each day of our lives as we exist, and we breathe in the airwaves of a positive embrace that we find ourselves within each day of our lives. And while every day is the unveiling of a new chapter of life, superheroes have a tendency to capture, to revitalize, or at least vitalize and to captivate our attention through the influence of how we would like to perceive reality as being. We would love the idea, the security of comfort, psychologically knowing that superheroes, we wish that superheroes would ultimately exist. However, the truth of it is that they do not. And with this being said, I am in no shape, form, or perspective to deny the interest within myself of superheroes. I love superheroes and anything that has to revolve around the concept and idea of science fiction and fantasy. However, we cannot ourselves dwell upon or walk upon the path of a fictitious reality. We have to at some point cross the border, the line that exists within the borders in our minds, in our psychology, to come full circle back to reality. And we have to perceive ourselves as being our own source of superheroes, because the sooner that we realize that, the greater that may we walk upon the journey of this life, this plane of existence. And I've grown up almost my entire existence watching superhero films, and it's taken me almost 2 decades to finally come to the realizations of the conclusion of my reality in the archives of my knowledge and my consciousness, to understand that our greatest influence should be through our belief with God, or a belief with a positive deity, a greater sense of purpose in ourselves, the light, or what have you, or at least in other perspectives. And if you're not someone who shares a particular faith, then you share that same faith that might a spiritualist human being hold, and you hold that within yourselves as human beings. And it's one of the greatest things to learn from, to discover the light of influence, the positives that exist within yourselves. And you have to be the one to invest that responsibility within yourselves to open the portal of the gateways of your minds and of your spirits. Now, you see, I do not fabricate the truth. I do not sugarcoat anything. I speak directly from the mind and from the heart and from my spirit. And I don't even need to really think of what I'm going to say, because ultimately it's an aura that flows and courses through my spirit for who I am. And I will not speak lies to you. I will not speak deception. And this life in itself, this existence, is ultimately a never-ending, infinite journey of consciousness that we ourselves walk upon the waters every day of our lives. in a journey of self-improvement. And one of the greatest, well, at least I should say, the beginning of the journey begins where we circumscribe our actions and our desires, that our desires should be the ambitions, aspirations, the willingness, the determination, the motivation, and understanding the comprehension of how we can manifest a positive influence within ourselves. The positives as we push out the vast oceans of negatives and darkness in our lives, in our mental frame of minds. And if we are somehow able to perceive ourselves as being our own superheroes, because ultimately you are your own superhero, believe it or not. And the purpose of this channel is an inspiration project. It is manifested in the positives, dedicated in our passions and our desires to reaching our obligation and our duty and our goal. And our goal and our dream is to change the world. Because we ourselves, on behalf of Jen and myself, we believe that through the positive influence and inspiration that is discovered through our videos, that we might be able to share our videos with the world, enough so to the point where where the world in itself manifests through the universe of our collective consciousness, of our videos. You might like to believe that sounds more or less fictitious or not a possibility. However, I believe it 1000% that it is a possibility. It's a vision and aspiration in which I had foreseen, and I wholeheartedly believe in it. As long as you believe in yourself or in your aspirations, your obligations and goals, and you could accomplish anything. So with this in conclusion, I say, believe in yourselves, maintain the balance in your walk of your light and the path of your journey for the positives, and continue to manifest yourselves within it. And do not be afraid to accept yourselves for who you are. And basically what I'm saying is, through being your own superhero, you don't necessarily have to have special powers in order to be someone. You don't have to necessarily be something grand and phenomenal and spectacular in order to find a goodwill and good faith and the joy that you believe in yourselves for the positives. And believe it or not, even if you, despite you do not have, special powers and this or that, you are your own greatest superhero. And that's it. And there are those, obviously, who are supervillains that exist in the world. And you don't have to look far or deep enough to discover those kinds of people. So, as always, thank you so much for watching. And please subscribe to this inspiration project. I hope that you had ultimately learned from watching our videos and watching this video in particular. And if you have not seen my other videos, I strongly recommend that you do. I hope that this video in itself had inspired you from what I had said and spoken of. So, being your own superhero. We live in such a society, in the 21st technological modern age of society and humanity, to where we look up to role models such as fictitious characters because psychologically we feel that urge to that comfort and that security. It's a false sense of security, because we have to survive in the real world, and the real world is full of good people, still good human beings, and there's still light that exists in the world. At the end of the tunnel and vast oceans of darkness, we have to rise above our obstacles every day of our lives. So anyway, that's what I wanted to say in conclusion. I've spoken enough, and if you have any further questions or seek information from me, ask and you shall receive. Ask, seek, and knock. And the light will encompass the square, the compass of the direction of your path, and the philosophy of a grandeur of something greater.